Is there anyone here who doesn't recognize any of these gentlemen who are sitting on my right? Okay, fine. We're safe. I'll just speak a little bit about my interactions with them. Rajdeep, who's on the extreme right, is my senior from college. So anytime he says anything, asks me to do anything, says basically demands, I have to just stand up and say, yeah, of course, no problem. Rajdeep appeared on a TV show called Quiz Time, which was an inter-college show. That's when television was far more civilized and informative. Uh, Gideon, who's sitting next to him, is someone I got to know through an article he wrote. How long ago? Sir Donald brand name? 20 years ago, he wrote an article called Sir Donald Brand Name, which is about how Don Bradman's name had been turned into a brand. And I said, this is just the most insightful piece of understanding what the idea of what Donald Bradman was to Australian cricket and world cricket. And then, of course, there's Anil, who I met when he was just selected for the Indian team. That's how old my journalism career is. That's how old I am. That's how long Anil has known me and is probably saying, what is she writing now? What is she saying now? Why does she do this? Has she learned anything? But Anil's been a sort of a friend and a ally and often an adversary. We've had a few arguments about cricketing things and so on. But one of a generation that I consider, as all journalists, we all have our teams. We are much more loyal to them than we are to either the generation before them or the generation after. And Anil is one of the pillars of what I think of as my Indian team. Before we start on the discussion that's happening, I must let everyone on the panel know that we actually shouldn't be here because we are talking about a sport that in social media it's considered we're far too old and far too idealistic and far too sort of romantic to be on a panel talking about T20. We are sort of basically a bunch of dinosaurs. We don't know what the hell 2020 cricket is about. And, it's all for millennials. It's all for young people. What are these old guys doing on this panel? So let me start with the oldest guy here and ask him what he thinks about 2020 cricket. What is his understanding of it? It's a very fundamental way to basically show you that, yeah, we know. I mean, I don't think Anil needs to explain, but I think it'll be good if he speaks for our generation.
Thank you, Sharda. Good evening, everyone. I'm not really sure what I'm doing in the midst of three journalists sitting on either side of me. So, yeah, 2020, when it first came, I was probably looking at the end of my career. The first time that I played T20 was in England when I played county cricket for Surrey. That was the first time that I played in a T20. And 2020, 2007 World Cup probably for India changed the way 2020 would be looked at. And the IPL obviously has come in and changed the entire scenario. For me, I played 3 years of IPL. The first year was always a challenge because, 4 overs was what it was as a spell. And for me at that age, it took me minimum 4 overs to warm up. And here I was supposed to bowl 4 overs in 4 different spells of 1 over each. And if you bowled 64 overs, which was my average in Test cricket, you would finish the IPL season. So, and RCB, by the way, in 2008, people spoke saying it's the best Test team of the century. And by the way, it was. So we really had, everything against us as a senior citizen in the context of T20. But once you have the foundation right, then it's just a matter of mind over matter. And that's exactly, I think, all the older generation guys did. It was just a change of mind over matter, and then it became a simpler game for all of us. But I think things have changed with the way people look at T20, with the way the entertainment is. I think it's there to stay. And yes, it has challenged a few other formats, but it's a wonderful, entertaining spectacle. And, I'm a part of it as well.
Rajdeep, speaking for our generation, I mean, if you can just explain what 2020 means to you, what you think about it, what is your response to it?
I first of all, thank you very much for having me and good evening. Uh, I like to believe that I'm in a generation older than you, Sharda. So, in a sense, since I'm the senior from college, I'm the 70s generation in a sense. That's when I was growing, 70s and 80s. So, the big thing for us was the circus would come once, every now and then to the city. And under the big top, you would have all these acrobats from Tellicherry, and you would have the clowns, and you would have the lion who went through fire. So it was, 3 hours of our way of escaping from the reality that surrounded us, and we were these goggle-eyed children watching this performance taking place. I think this generation, if I look right in front, doesn't go to the circus. You go to the IPL instead. And where you once had escapism through these acrobats and these lions or tigers going through the fire, because now you can't even have that. Menaka Gandhi will not allow it, right? So with animal rights activists, you can't even do that. So for this generation, they've got real life entertainment. They've got 3 hours of real life entertainment for 6 weeks. I particularly see this happening in Bengaluru, where I see these, people shouting RCB with face paint. You're part of this sort of circle spectacle. I'm uncomfortable with it because for me, cricket was about, again, the pre-liberalization era. So it was Sunil Gavaskar batting 6 hours for 95 not out. And then we felt, there is Gavaskar. As long as Gavaskar's there, India's there. So it was another generation cricket-wise, but I think it's another generation entertainment-wise. I think this generation's notion of entertainment is the McDonaldization of cricket. And, you get 3 hours of fun. Next morning, you want to do something else with your life. So the circus is gone. There's a new circus in town. I mean, Anil is not a clown. He's India's greatest spin bowler. Even if I've not included him in my Democracy's 11, and I feel terrible about it. And I'll give you a reason for it one day. But the fact is that I think that's how I see it. I see it as pure entertainment by terrifically talented people over 3 hours. I would like the camera to gaze more on the players than on the owners. But that's the choice of the owners, I guess. That's the commercial world in which we live in. But it leaves me feeling empty at the end, I must confess. At the end of a 3-hour IPL, I've 1 hour later forgotten about it. Next morning when I saw the circus, I used to remember what, all the clowns and all the acts. I think that's the one change. I think, it's unappetizing beyond a point. But I think for the millennials, it's their way of celebrating. It's their way of excitement. It's their way of, in a way, sort of connecting to a sport which is so much a part of our lives.
Gideon, what's your take? Do you think of yourself as a purist, as a classicist?
Well, I have you know that 3 weeks ago I captained my club in a T20 game and I even hit a 6. I know. And frankly, if you've ever seen me bat, to know that I've hit a 6, it's obviously T20 is a completely transformational game. I think it's interesting. The premise of today's discussion, which I might say I came up with, is we were looking at the impact of India winning the World T20 in 2007. But it's interesting that as seminal a day as that was, and as powerful have been the implications, that has not been the format that has changed the face of the world. The T20 International is a strangely is a format of the game that only becomes significant every few years when there's a World T20. In between times, T20 internationals are often on the end or before the start of an ODI tournament, and the records of that format are not particularly well known. The ratings aren't felt to be particularly significant. It's the domestic format that's gone forth and multiplied, and that's whose implications we're having to come to terms with, because it hasn't been an event that's been entirely sort of quarantined and sterilised. It's had huge second and third order implications for the other formats of the game, which are kind of unforeseeable even now. Often we look back and we feel that history has been made, but we're actually living through history right now. We're in a transitional stage in cricket's evolution, and no one knows where the chips will fall.
The argument that I tend to agree with what Gideon says about that it's not international T20 that has changed the world game. International T20, in case anyone is interested, is the one that I love watching. I can watch it obsessively all the time. Domestic T20, never mind. I just wanted to ask Anil, had India not won that 2007 World T20 tournament, would things have still stayed the same? Because you do think that there were other forces at play at the time going on in cricket that had sort of set the ball rolling, and that you couldn't have actually stopped the clock at that time because the ICL had come into play. There were all these other, Lalit Modi was around. He wasn't making as much news or noise as he did, say, 6 months after that. But was winning important, or was it just the fact that the Indians had got to a point where which the format captivated them?
I think a combination of both. Winning certainly helped. Winning helped fast track the process. I mean, like you mentioned, ICL was around, and prior to even the 2007 World Cup, T20 World Cup, 2006 when we toured South Africa, there was a one-off T20 game where none of the seniors played. Even in that T20, which we beat South Africa. We beat South Africa in Joburg, where none of the senior players played. So yes, T20, not just from an Indian point of view, even internationally, international teams did not look at it seriously at that point in time. Even in the first IPL, probably just people played for entertainment, and then suddenly they realized that it was not just that. You had to be pretty serious. And when I say serious, in terms of the skills, in terms of variations that you need to bring in your armory as a bowler or as a batsman, you need to be innovative. And the strategies kept changing. Right from IPL 1 to IPL 10, I think strategy has changed, has taken a total overhaul. So in that sense, the T20 World Cup win only catalyzed what India wanted at that point in time. And I think IPL really captured the imagination because of, traveling around India to various cities and then having a day-night game and a double header on television, a 4 o'clock game and a 8 o'clock game. So that, I think, captured the imagination. People, in spite of, whether your home franchise won or lost, till the 7th home match, you still had the interest. And that, I think, was the key moment of the success that IPL has had. And I think the catalyst, obviously, was the World Cup victory. That certainly helped, take advantage, and then everyone realizing that, there's huge potential here.
The strange thing, Gideon, about the fact that the T20 World Cup took place. The T20 World Cup was won by India, and then it led to it didn't lead to the IPL. The events that followed happened to be the ICL and the IPL. Was it not, from your point of view, sitting in Australia, the format had been invented by the English.
Yes.
It was there, it was around. What kicked it off? Just looking at it as an outsider, what did you see happening at that point in time? Did you think it would be successful? Did you think the IPL was something, it had private ownership?
Interesting question. I mean, I'd seen my first T20 in England in 2005 because it was about to come to Australia. I thought I'd go and see the semi-finals and the final of the domestic T20 competition in England. My overwhelming recollection of that day is how catastrophically drunk the English audience got because they had all the 3 finals on the one day, interrupted by several rain breaks. And by the time the game was over, everyone was half cut. And I thought, this doesn't look like a particularly family-friendly affair. Actually, that's one of the good things about T20 is that because it's a short-duration sport, some of those kind of bacchanalic aspects of it, it's don't prevail as they perhaps have in ODI cricket. The interesting thing I remember about the 2007 World T20 is that it wasn't on television in Australia at all. It was regarded as so trivial or so experimental and so kind of out of season. It was taking place in September, coinciding with the Australian Football League finals, that it sort of what didn't register very strongly in Australian consciousness. T20, I think we'd played a handful of T20 internationals to that point. We regarded them as a bit of a joke. One of the early things that people tend to forget about the World T20 is that Australia lost their first game. They lost to Zimbabwe. And we'd undergone a period of extensive Australian dominance in international cricket. And one of the things that T20 seemed to offer was more unpredictable results. Everyone had kind of got sick of Australia kind of sweeping the field. They just won the World Cup in the Caribbean in 2007. So Australia losing that early game to Zimbabwe and then India winning a series of close ones raised the possibility of surprise finishes or surprise outcomes. And people love that possibility in sport. It was so refreshing to see that possibility glimpsed. And I was looking back over the coverage of the 2007 World T20. I think the IPL was actually foreshadowed on September the 13th, about 2 days after the tournament began, and Lalit Modi and Shah Rukh Khan were both seen at the final hugging each other with glee, because of course in some respects they'd backed T20 before a rather sceptical BCCI, and all of a sudden they probably realised, perhaps not to that great an extent, what a hit they had potentially on their hands.
Rajdeep, as a journalist, I sometimes seem to think that, 2020 for us is more sort of like a business proposition kind of a story that it becomes. And every year the IPL had this scandal, and which Lalit Modi apparently loved. The more controversy, the more headlines, yippee, let's keep doing this. And our response to it, the players seem far more mature, and they seem far more, they have the capacity to improvise. But as journalists, it's like our brain is stuck in some age. I don't know what it is. What do we expect what our standard is? How do you write about T20? I don't think we've understood how to cover it properly still.
Let me just go to the 2007 thing for a moment, because I think we forget some things that happened in 2007. India lost the World Cup badly in 2007 in the month of March. We lost to Bangladesh. We haven't forgotten. We were not. And Indians, particularly younger Indians, don't like to lose. See, my generation was happy if we drew the match. We felt good. This generation had grown up on the idea that India wins. The entire machine, the media machine was ye dil mange more. All these ads, moka. Everything was, we are number one. Then you lose, you need something for redemption. So that World Cup was important as a form of redemption. Then that was the year when the Indian economy for the first time started touching double digits. You see, the slowdown takes place in 2008. By 2007, Indians are suddenly discovering the world, in terms of malls are coming up. There's this whole consumer drive. So there's a need to satisfy the consumerism of the new Indian. And importantly, you had in Lalit Modi someone who was not a BCCI official. He was actually a businessman, impresario. He had already decided that the IPL was coming. So it's not as if the World Cup win prevented him. It just gave him a super hit. It was like a Muhurat show. It was like the trailer, which eventually led to the big bang. He went to South Africa and he tells me this story. He goes to the dressing room before the match that India has to play against England, I think, and says, if anyone hits 6 sixes, I will give them a BMW. What happens? That very match, Yuvraj Singh goes and hits 6 sixes. And Lalit Modi is waving his keys of the BMW. Apparently so, he says. Yuvraj points the bat, where's my BMW? Now, all these things happen suddenly. Then he decides that he's going to have a motorcade or a bus, open car bus, which is going to take the team back after they win. It's raining in Mumbai. Ganesh Chaturthi is over. You don't expect the crowds to come. What happens? Every Mumbaikar lines up the street. And all surrounded by a guy who's the captain of the team, who is someone relatively unknown, is very unlike an Indian cricketer. He's got long hair right up to here. He's willing to open, he's got huge muscles. He comes from a city called Ranchi. And suddenly you've got the ideal prototype to play T20, because it was a tournament designed for Mahendra Singh Dhoni. You see, you need entertainers. T20, he's a jumbo of a cricketer, but he's not a T20 cricketer in the classic style. Even though people forget, he has probably the best figures in the IPL for any team. We often tend to forget that, right? 5 wickets. He'll remember.
No, people tend to forget bowlers, and I don't want to
Okay,
comment
okay.
on your book tomorrow as well.
Okay.
Let's not go that route. Even in your 11, you only have 2 bowlers, Rajdeep.
Agreed. I agree.
So yeah, but
Okay.
batsmen are the entertainers. Bowlers win your matches.
True, but the IPL was designed for the bat. It was designed to create these sort of new form of entertainers. And Dhoni on the top of that bus with the holding that cup became for this generation. And I've seen it now. 10 years later, get Dhoni walking into the crowd. They cheer him. I've only seen Sachin being cheered like that by an Indian crowd. He is not even Virat Kohli. Virat Kohli, nobody has a Dhoni's got away with a lot of controversies in a way that, perhaps no other cricketer would have got, because 2007, I think, for the millennial generation was their 1983 moment.
This is why the millennials wanted one of them on the stage. We are trying our best to speak on your behalf. So go ahead, Rajdeep.
No, I'm just saying, I think it all came together. An emerging economy which was suddenly double digit, consumerism, these business houses which want to get identified with entertainment, and so therefore want to own franchises. Bollywood had become larger than life in our lives, much more than even the 70s and 80s, with Shah Rukh, playing this kind of role of impresario again. And Lalit Modi himself. I mean, I don't think we should underestimate Lalit Modi's contribution. BCCI is, were the old world. They were license permit Raj types. Lalit Modi was designed for globalization. He was there he was primarily a marketing man. He was there to market himself and therefore saw this sport as the ideal vehicle for marketing.
I'm wondering whether I should ask Anil first about his impressions on Lalit Modi, or whether I should ask Gideon first about what did the outside world make of Lalit Modi. So, Anil, you want to go first? Yeah.
And don't be diplomatic. He's not here, he's abroad.
You've named a book diplomacy. It's the Democracy 11, and I'm sure you're...
Ever since I haven't put you on the cover of the book, you're upset.
No, I'm not upset, Rajdeep.
If you read the
I've
book,
never been diplomatic.
if you read the book, it starts with you in the context of Karnataka cricket.
I'll go through it. No, I think yes, IPL certainly changed the way cricket was looked at in India. I mean, Lalit certainly gets the credit for that in this, from starting from 2008 and then marketing the way it has been. I think it's come a long way. It's not just about entertainment now. I mean, we look at strategies. That's why I spoke about strategies in cricket. It's not just about the entertainment value. If you look at the auction, for example, there's a lot of strategizing that goes around. It's not just about picking key batsmen now. They're looking at how you want to strategize and win a game of cricket, where even the bowlers, all-rounders, and mystery spinners are more valuable than a batsman now. So that's the kind of strategy that has happened over the last 10 years. And cricket itself, I think the impact that T20 cricket, not just IPL, of course IPL because the world looks at it because of franchise model, and then the money that has come in because of the IPL. It's certainly given not just 15 cricketers in India the opportunity to reach out to millions of homes, but it's also given the other 80 or 90 unheard of names. I mean, we remember the Paul Valtatis, who's played just the IPL, become a hero, unfortunately couldn't go on from there on. And there have been many stories like that in the IPL, and a couple of them have gone on to represent India. And that's the beauty about the competition, because let me tell you, as cricketers and someone who's been involved over the last 10 years with the IPL, it's serious cricket. It's challenging for the players. It's extremely, it's pressure. There's a lot of pressure to perform, and every day under extreme conditions. You should remember that it happens during April and May, and invariably it is 2 games in 3 days. Sometimes 3 games in 4 days. And that's the challenge. And in between travels as well and humid conditions. So it's extreme pressure on the players. And the impact that it has had, not just on T20 cricket, but then overall world cricket. If you look at Test cricket now, more than 50% of Test matches are result-oriented. All of them. I mean, not more, 50. I mean, it's almost 70%. Last year, we had the maximum number of test matches, 55 test matches, out of which 47 were results, which never happened because of the way the batsmen play, the way the bowlers make the game, and that's the way the game is played. And today, in the fourth innings, irrespective of what the conditions are, I don't think any captain will put his hand up. I mean, Joe Root will probably, think twice of declaring when you know that the opposition needs 4.5 runs and over or 5 runs and over on the last day of a test match. That's the conversion that has happened with regard to T20 cricket. And even in one-day cricket, 360 was never heard of, was being chased. 400 is being chased. Double hundreds are being scored. And that's the change that you see. And I think all this credit should go to IPL. Credit should go to the T20 format itself in terms of the change. And even as a bowler, you have to be one up. You have to keep innovating, and that's the beauty that T20 has brought into the rest of the formats as well.
Gideon, as someone who sort of followed the history of the game from sort of almost like a long distance view, both not just an Australian view, but just looking at the game as it is. Anil's spoken a lot about what the benefits have been in terms of just a faster, fitter game and higher scores and results and so on. So then there are dinosaurs like us who'll say, oh, but batsmen have forgotten how to leave the ball. They've forgotten how to play the long innings. Is there a balance that you think that, no, it's fine, it's okay if it works like this, because the game has to keep evolving. It can't stay stagnant. You can't have batsmen batting for 5 hours for 120 anymore. It's not done.
Well, when you do see it, it looks so old-fashioned. It looks so completely out of place. It makes you feel almost nostalgic when you do see it, because it does still happen. You do see batsmen bed in for long periods, and you think that's kind of old-fashioned Test cricket. You see Pujara bat, and you think, that's the way it used to be. That might be, the way in which you introduce children to the way in which cricket used to be in your own generation. I think one thing that it's changed quite a lot is the attitude to consistency. Consistency used to be one of the cardinal virtues of cricket. The ability to reproduce a skill over and over again. In some respects, Glenn McGrath is the sort of the definitive bowler of the 1990s and early 2000s, because he had such a robust and repeatable method. His ability to land the ball on a sixpence. Well, nowadays, if you land a ball on a sixpence in T20, you're going to go for some serious runs. What you need now for a bowler is variety, the ability to bowl 6 different balls in an over, the ability to, and as a batsman, to premeditate shots, which is something that you were never meant to do in old-fashioned cricket, first-class cricket. You played each ball on its merits. Nowadays, the idea of playing each ball on its merits is to be a dog in the manger, isn't it? To allow the bowler to dictate the terms, in a way. So in a lot of respects, it's turned cricket on its head. And that's kind of fascinating to watch. I think it's also had an interesting effect on the psychology of players. It used to be, for a bowler to be hit for 6 was the most acute of psychological challenges. It was the real throwing down of a gauntlet. In T20, it's simply an occupational hazard. You just got to scratch your head and go back to your mark and do it all over again and make sure it doesn't happen repeatedly. If you're a batsman, failure used to be terribly psychologically injurious. I remember talking to Ricky Ponting a few years ago about T20. Now, Ricky, great player that he was, never quite adapted to T20. His T20 record isn't particularly great. And I asked him about the transition of being that kind of player to a T20 environment. And he said, well, when I was brought up, I hated getting out. The most important thing for me as a kid was to just bat forever. And the idea that I would contribute in some way to the bowler getting me out would have been, anathema to me. But for this generation, getting out is just an accident. It's just something that happens. It's just something that you've got to live with. And providing that every so often, every, say, 5 or 6 games, you contribute some dynamic feat that changes the shape of a game, that brings it towards your side, you are being an effective T20 cricketer. So in that respect, being consistent is kind of very 20th century.
But as a result, what you've got, Sharda, is a situation where this generation probably venerates, or I wouldn't use the word venerates, but celebrates a Hardik Pandya more than they do a Pujara. A Pujara plays test cricket will probably end up with a 50 plus average, which is a barometer for greatness. And you've got this little kid with his tattoos and his earring, and he's an entertainer. And he made a good point to me. He said that, I shared a lot of time with Kieran Pollard, the West Indian. Now, a 19-year-old young boy from Baroda suddenly gets a chance to spend time with this muscular batsman called Kieran Pollard. And he said, I decided I wanted to be the next Kieran Pollard. Now, a 19, 20-year-old who had not even got a first-class 100 would never have had the opportunity to be with a Pollard or even thought like that. So this generation has this sense of freedom, liberation, which is represented in IPL by the Hardik Pandyas. I mean, Sunil Gavaskar would never put a tattoo or put a earring, right? I don't think even Chiteshwar Pujara would. But somehow the IPL liberates you. It enables you to break all convention. And
it helps that you have Kohli as a captain who's fine with tattoos and...
No. Actually, all questions on Kohli should be directed to Anil, but that for another day. But the fact is...
I can take any question, Rajdeep, but I think
Audience questions, 15 minutes at the end. So,
yeah, I think. See, T20 is all about fearlessness. I mean, even as a bowler, Gideon mentioned about a bowler running in and getting hit for the six. I hate it. I hated when a batsman hit me for a boundary, or let alone even take a single. So yeah, that's the competitiveness.
Or if a fielder misfielded.
Yeah, terrible. That was worse.
Not if the fielder was me. So, as a bowler, you're there to get a batsman out, and yeah, if you keep getting pumped sixes and fours, it's not a pretty sight. So that's something that you get used to playing in a T20. I mean, the challenge is to again come back and see how you can get a batsman out, and that's the mindset change that I was talking about. From a bowler's perspective and from a batsman's perspective, he can't have that fear of getting out. He has to be, like you said, really liberated and go out there and then not worry about, what if I get out? That's where you see the younger lot who are growing up on the shorter format being a lot more fearless than the established players, because the established players have a track record and have a legacy. So when they walk in, they always take a little bit more time, whereas a fearless guy, someone like Hardik, who's come in and probably developed his game and reached a lot of households because of the T20 format, is really fearless. And that's why even in Test cricket, that's the way he bats. And, that's the change that you see in a batting which has grown up in this era.
Because, you keep a long on and long off, and presumably the new generation batsman will still try and hit for six. But it's a strange sort of, you mentioned Kohli. In a sense, Kohli is the 3-in-1 millennial master, because he has now mastered three formats. 50 overs, where he started off, Test cricket, where he's now scored double hundreds, and he's mastered the T20 game. Now, this is
relatively risk-free. He plays
relatively risk-free, and this is a unique sport. I mean, hockey moved from grass to AstroTurf, so you had to play on AstroTurf all the time. It wasn't as if you were playing three sports. Now you're playing three sports. And Kohli told me something interesting. He prepares for the three sports differently. He said, T20 is 100-meter sprint. When I'm playing 50 overs, I'm running 1,500 meters. When I'm playing Test cricket, I'm doing the marathon. So he actually does 20 minutes of weight training before a T20 game, because he says it gives him what he calls explosive energy, which is why he needs to just run and run for 3 hours. Now, that's changed the game. I don't think in my father's generation or even Anil's generation, you would be lifting weights for 20 minutes before a cricket match. This is the dramatic change that has happened, which only cricket allows, because it's now a sport which is three sports. It's not one sport. A Chiteshwar Pujara is a test player. He's not even a one-day player. And you have some players like Jasprit Bumrah who are not test players but are, one-day specialists. So you actually are watching three sports now. I may watch Test cricket. Gideon may watch T20, Anil may watch one days, and very few people now want to watch all three formats, really, honestly, unless you've got very little else to do in life.
No, I think in terms of the misconception of what I feel that cricket is watched only one format people watch and the other format people don't watch, yes. But I think all of them follow all the three formats. I think that is most important for me because of social media and also with so much of communication that happens through television, through Twitter and through Facebook and then your notifications that keeps coming in. I'm sure who are cricket lovers, all of them follow all the formats. And you know what is happening in a test match where Zimbabwe is playing in West Indies or even in a T20 or in a one-dayer where India is playing New Zealand. So I think, in terms of, yes, you may not get people sitting and watching the game in a stadium, but I certainly believe that because of so much of cricket and so much of communication that is available to us, I think the following of cricket is increased. And that's the beauty about the T20 format, because the younger generation have caught on to watching T20, but yet they follow the other formats as well. So I think that's the change that you see because of T20 cricket.
But let's be honest, if Karnataka played Mumbai at the Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bangalore, you'd struggle to get 1,000 people. But if there was a T20 match between Royal Challengers, is that what they're still called? Okay, Royal Challengers Bangalore versus Mumbai Indians, you'd get a full house.
Yeah,
but Rajdeep, Karnataka versus Mumbai never got the attention 25 years ago. So I don't think it's any change. So I don't think there's any change because, Karnataka versus Mumbai at Bangalore, even when I was playing, there was hardly anyone. There was 500 people watching. So I think the comparison of a Ranji Trophy with a T20, yes, it's entertainment. And the same goes. If Karnataka and Mumbai, the same players, play in a T20, there's hardly anyone watching. So it's the television, it's the marketing, and it's also the reach. And I think the paraphernalia which surrounds the game itself is most important than actually game itself. And that's why you can see the comparison between the IPL and a Mushtaq Ali versus a Ranji Trophy and to an extent Test cricket.
Gideon, many sort of good things have come from 2020, but there is also great anxiety in the international game that you are now getting more and more in many countries where there is not so much wealth in their game. You're getting more and more freelance players who are playing only 2020, so that the game in cricket in India is far richer and it's followed far more extensively and will sort of go the longer run. You think that in smaller countries where there's not that much revenues, there's not much for kids to get into without being T20 players, without becoming freelancers. Is that a worry in the sense of an international game? The ICC is always rejigging formats, and all this is going on with responding to what 2020 has brought in international cricket in the smaller countries.
Sure, we've introduced a third format, but we haven't expanded the number of players by 1/3. So inevitably, we're going to be drawing on the same gene pool of players, and that's going to probably dilute the overall quality. And there's the incessancy of the competition. It's so demanding now that players do have to pick and choose if they're going to lead careers of any decent length. I think that the players' priorities are interesting, and what they will continue to value. I'd like to think that certainly from my conversations with Australian players over the last few years, they still regard Test cricket as the ultimate test of a player's versatility and resilience and quality and skill level. And they continue to aspire to that, when perhaps you might have expected 5 years ago that they would have taken more sort of economically rigorous decisions, more sort of economically rational decisions to say, right, I'm going to quit now and I'm going to concentrate all my energies on leading a freelance life. But you are depending an awful lot on the players' goodwill towards the longer formats. In some respects, the players are going to have to be the conscience of the game, because I'm not sure that the administrators are really interested in taking that role.
One of the many memorable things Gideon has written about at one point, which all of us use over and over again when we're writing, is that is cricket there to generate business, or does
cricket exist to make money, or does money exist to make cricket? I've forgotten exactly what I've said now, but it's a sort of a cart before the horse. I think there's a desire to kind of industrialise and monetise every aspect of cricket, and the only possible course is the largest profit. And I guess that comes from the introduction of private capital into the game, which the IPL introduced, and which Australia has been reluctant to follow and still feels ambivalent about, but perhaps inevitably will go down that direction eventually.
I'm not sure how many millennial MBAs are there in the audience.
Sharda, link to this point.
Quick check. How many millennial MBAs in the audience? Put your hand up. I can see about 10 or 12. Okay. So that's the question. Is cricket there to make money? Is that its entire reason that it is there? Or is the point is that making money is a part of cricket, it's not the whole thing. So I'll just...
Because Sharda, just look at it in historical perspective. In the 50s and 60s, great cricketers were paid 250 rupees for a test match. And when India won a test match once in 4 days, 50 rupees was cut. Please understand from where we are coming. From that age to the age where last year T. Narayan, one speedster from Tamil Nadu, who is not even a regular with Tamil Nadu, got a 3 crore contract from Mumbai Indians. His parents are daily wage laborers. Look at the transformation.
No one is arguing about
no,
the
so I'm
presence
saying,
of cricket.
look at the transformation it's made. It's become aspirational. In every corner of this country today, why do you want to play cricket? Now, because parents believe that they could be the next T. Narayan. Right? You don't even have to be the next Anil Kumble. That's not good. These are once in a generation cricketers.
There's a wider base.
There's a wider space, and you can actually make... Look at Jadeja. Jadeja has a stable of horses, has restaurants, has a fleet of cars. Salim Durrani, probably a greater, more talented player than Jadeja would ever be in the 50s and 60s, had to struggle to make ends meet. So this argument that is cricket there to make money or money, at the end of the day, cricket should become like any other sport, professional. And it's good that if the IPL did that, good for the IPL.
Yeah. I don't think there's a debate about whether cricketers or sportsmen should make money. It's just a question of the perspective and the scale at which you are able to, particularly those people who are involved in administrating the game. So Anil, you're on the technical committee of the ICC. What has been the response to this whole the sort of balancing act between 2020 money and international cricket, and how do you keep everything sort of healthy and the best things about cricket out there and the most profitable as well?
Yeah, I think, from a cricket perspective or a cricket committee's perspective, the decisions that we generally discuss on is what is good for cricket. Because we don't want to get into the administration part or whether money that is involved is good or bad or not good. So I think from a cricket perspective, context to every game is something that was relevant, and that was a discussion point. And I'm glad that there's a Test championship coming in, and there's a ODI championship, and there's a pathway to making it to the World Cup. And similarly, even in T20, even the T20 internationals, there is an Asia Cup. Only Asia Cup. In Asia, you have a T20 Asia Cup. So similarly, you will have a Africa Cup and a Austral Cup, New Zealand. So I think context to cricket is something that is relevant, and that's why I think IPL is not just Gideon mentioned saying the difference between a good team and a not so good team is now thin, and the results are it's a surprise. You can't expect that. Yes, 100% I can say that this team is going to beat the other team in a T20, and that's the competition has become really far greater, and the line between winning and losing is a very thin line. And again, if you look at the context itself for T20, IPL is such a great tournament because there's a context. Between April and May, you have a context for every match, and leading up to a winner at the end of May. I think that's why people love it. People want to go there and watch their teams or whoever they support. And similarly, Test cricket and the championship is looking at that. So at the end of 2 years, you will have a winner. Currently, we do have a number one, having the mace, but then it's a ranking system. So I think it'll be good from a context perspective, and that's what we generally discuss. And like in any, I think, corporate world, all 3 products won't make money. One product is the bestseller, and then you still have to have your your legacy products going through, because that's the beauty about what your brand has been built on over so many years. And similarly, if you look at Wimbledon, everybody talks about tennis. You say US Open versus a Wimbledon. Wimbledon is still traditional. No one wears color dress. No one wears a hat. I mean, if it's all white, but people love it. That's because there's a context to Wimbledon. There's a clear window for Wimbledon. There's a whole lot of things surrounding the sport itself and surrounding marketing the event itself. And players aspire to play Wimbledon. And similarly, I can vouch for the Indian team that all players aspire to play Test cricket. Yes, all of us make a lot of money playing T20, but every cricketer you go and see in India, everybody would aspire to play Test cricket. But his route could be through the IPL. Yes, that's because the base is too broad. It's not just about 15 players making it to the Indian team. You have a larger base of 80, 90, 100 players. And that's the beauty about the T20 format itself, where it's giving opportunities to someone like a Hardik Pandya, someone like Shreyas Iyer. He's done really well leading up to, in the India A and Ranji Trophy and everything else. But he's also done well in the IPL. And that's why, he's making his, entry into the Indian team.
Thanks, Anil. I'll just have a couple of comments from, just concluding comments. If Gideon, if you would want to say anything about where do you think international cricket stands at this moment with, you're competing with Anil's worldview, by the way.
I'm not sure the coexistence is going to be as peaceful as we'd like, but I think we're all moving into uncharted territory. What the T20 revolution has introduced is this idea of club versus country. And club, of course, has one huge advantage over country, which is in the sense that you can balance the competition between clubs by arbitrary means like salary caps and drafts, and just by artificial means, and that conduces to evenness of competition and surprise outcomes. The risk with international cricket has always been that that success will naturally accrue in this moneyed age to the team with the greatest resources, to the team with the race will go to the most powerful countries. I think we're already getting into the situation with international cricket where it's this kind of a two-speed economy, where the top 3 or 4 nations are peeling away from the next 4, which I think is going to potentially undermine the long-term future of international cricket. I think the Test Championship is potentially a good way of redressing that, but it remains to be seen in some of the detail as to what we end up with. And the fact is that the other liberating thing about domestic T20 is that it's quite refreshing to have games that you don't care about. It's quite fun to be able to watch cricket in a completely relaxed frame of mind, feeling as though nothing very much hinges on the results. And I think that goes not only for fans, but for players as well. Talking to a few players in Australia last summer, one of the comments that came back to me about playing in the BBL, one of the reasons that they quite liked it, was that they never walked off at the end of a game feeling particularly elated or particularly disappointed about the outcome. It was always pretty easy to make sense of why they'd lost or why they'd won. Guy had made 80, we dropped him early, game over. There's something kind of quite reassuring and quite relaxing about T20's simplicity. It doesn't overly trouble us. Yes, it doesn't lay down particularly strong and rich memories, but at the same time, it can be just quite a nice way to bide your time of an evening, to have it on television every night. Nothing better than television on cricket every night.
And, the great thing is that you can have an Australian and a New Zealander sharing a dressing room and opening an attack together. You can have
an Indian and a Pakistani.
That's what I was going to come to. The tragedy is, and I know this audience may look at it, what I find unfortunate is that for all the talk of franchise cricket, which really derives from the free market philosophy, that, players are up for sale, why is it that after the first 2 years, India decided, or the club owners was so susceptible, people who are possibly more powerful than our politicians, said we will say no to Pakistani players. What is it that prevents this generation? For me, I know this is, as I said, controversial. One of the great, battles of my childhood was to watch the Pakistanis play Indian. Imran Khan versus Gavaskar and Vishwanath was as big as it got, and yet we allow our sub-nationalisms and our nationalisms to take over, wherein this generation will not get to see the Pakistanis play even franchise cricket. Why? If it is, what is it? If it is all about Royal Challengers Bangalore, it's not about India, surely. Why can I not see this young leg spinner Shadab Khan play for Bangalore Royal Challengers? Suddenly I remember my Indian patriotism. Then I forget that I'm a Bangalorean. Then I'm an Indian. A Pakistani is persona non grata. Why? The basis of T20 IPL style cricket should have been to break all boundaries, where players are valued for their talents, not because they are Pakistanis, Indians. We are okay with India versus... So if the English and Australians can play, if the New Zealanders... I know there's... I think we somewhere have to realize that we can't have it both ways. We want to generate franchise cricket. Then we must keep all these sub-nationalisms and nationalisms aside, these competitive nationalism, and celebrate cricket for sheer talent. I want to see a Bangalore side next year with Shadab Khan from one end and the Afghan leggy from the other. What's wrong with that? That's the way cricket should be played.
You're getting applause, Rajdeep, which is fantastic.
I don't think a majority will agree with that. A majority of Indians have decided Pakistanis are persona non grata.
I had only one more question to ask Anil, but I can ask them later. But now the problem is, I can see hands up. We'll need to get the lights on the stage dimmed a little bit, because then we can't see who's asking the question. Then I'll just pick favorites from whoever's wearing nice clothes. Yeah. Okay, the lady in the middle, can someone get her a mic? And just questions, no comments, no observations. This is not a court. Just ask a question, one sentence, quickly.
Good evening, I'm Usha Rao. Rajdeep, you said that for you, T20 is like a circus. I am in my 70th year. So for me, actually, even a ODI is a circus. For me, cricket, the test cricket is the real thing, Test cricket is like a Gurudutt or a Bimal Roy classic, whereas T20 is like a Golmaal series of films, actually. What do you think?
I have a son who's studying medicine in his final year in Manipal. Last weekend, he went and saw Golmaal 3 twice. So I think that says it all. Look, the audience will determine that. If the younger generation wants T20, you can't deny them that. We can't sort of sit on our pulpit and say only test cricket is the real thing. The world is changing. And I think you and your grandson should sit together and you should teach him what test cricket is about, and he should tell you why you should be watching T20. It's got to bridge generations. Do that next time.
The gentleman in the Nehru jacket. Yeah. Can someone give him the mic? He's standing where the lady is standing.
Hello. The aim was to take cricket to newer countries. IPL, I think, has achieved that. I was in Bhutan, and people have started following cricket because of IPL, and people follow the cricketers. And I think T20 is a wonderful format to take it to newer countries. It does not be about 10 or 12 countries which are playing. And that should be the aim of ICC.
What's the question, sir?
I just want to ask Anil, isn't it a way to take it to the newer countries, non-cricket playing countries,
Yeah, I think the T20 World Cup will have 16 teams. So that's the start. And even if you look at the international cups that you're playing, I spoke about the Asia Cup. Asia Cup has UAE, Afghanistan. Now Afghanistan is a full member, but then when Asia Cup was started as a T20 format, Afghanistan was not a full member. So Afghanistan was a part of Asia Cup. UAE was a part of Asia Cup. And similarly, the tournaments of other continents are considered. Then T20's growth will be far greater. And that's the beauty about T20. I agree with you. And even at the World Cup, there are 16 teams that will be taking part in the T20 World Cup, whereas ODI, it's much lesser.
Hello, Mr. Anil Kumble. Thank you so much for...
Question.
Yeah, thank you so much for everything you have given us ever. Your behavior, your attitude, your spirit. You have inspired us so much. So my question... What are your uncensored thoughts on Srishant? This morning, Mr. Gideon Haigh said that in T20, players'
Okay,
souls.
you're asking what are his uncensored thoughts on Srishant? That's your question,
yeah,
right?
People's souls
Okay,
aren't
stop.
touching T20. Is that the reason the soul's not touched by T20? That
No,
players
one
might
second.
think,
You
yeah.
said what are your uncensored thoughts? He
On
replied.
Srishant? Yeah, thank you.
Sorry?
T20, uncensored thoughts or T20 touching the soul? What is the question?
What's the... So, yeah. No, I don't think... Yeah, I mean, see, it's not the question of T20 touching your soul. I think it certainly, from a player's perspective, it certainly touches their soul. And the larger base is there, so education is extremely crucial. The challenges of people reaching out to a larger base players is a lot more. And today, with communication being what it is, it's very difficult to put a surveillance on every player or every official who's involved in the game. So it's a huge challenge. And at the end of it, cricket is just a game. It's what the society is all about. It's a microcosm of what we see in the society. So you can't insulate cricket and say everything is fine, but the society is bad. Sorry. It's a reflection of what we are as a society. So you can't insulate a sport just because it's sport and it needs to be played in a fair game, that you can insulate the game itself. I think that's the challenge that all of us are in. You can't really insulate the game. It's very important to do so, but the people who are managing it, they're working on it. It's a work in progress. So it's, you can always come up with new things and then again you start addressing those issues. So there's no one foolproof, arrangement that, yes, once you've done this, the game is safe.
I'm just interested in the counterfactual. What would have happened to cricket if there'd been no T20? What if, in fact, I mean, India, of course, didn't want to participate in the World T20 in 2007. They thought it was ridiculous. Niranjan Shah apparently went to the ICC meeting and said that India will never play T20. What would have happened if the rest of the world had sided with the BCCI on this matter and, say, the World T20 hadn't gone ahead in 2007 and we'd never got around to cultivating this variant?
England would still have been playing it.
I guess they would have, yeah.
At some point, someone would have caught on to an idea.
Perhaps someone from private enterprise would have done it in the way that Subhash Chandra did it.
Yeah.
But it was interesting. There was quite a strong adversity to the format.
But that was just because it was about television money.
Yeah.
I'll just get a question from this young man here.
Okay, Anil sir, thanks a lot. You really had inspired me to be a leg spinner, but later I think I gravitated to be a fast bowler. Now, coming to my question, even though there are famous countries like USA like near the West Indies, why hasn't cricket gone there? Even though the Indian population is high, Indian population, Australian population, the population is high, but why isn't cricket present there?
No, actually, the first game of cricket was played in the US. And that first international for a long, long time ago. And there are probably 100 clubs in every major city in the US. And like you mentioned, there are a lot of Indians, expats, West Indians, Pakistanis, Sri Lankans, English, Australians, across South Africans, everyone playing cricket in the US. And last time when we went to Florida and we played 2 T20 internationals against West Indies, the stadium could only hold 12,000 capacity and it was full. And yes, cricket in the US is something that will certainly happen, not necessarily now. But for some reason, there were issues with the administration at the US, and that's being sorted out. And that's something that I'm sure once that gets sorted out, then US will also be a part of. In fact, USA sent out a team, for the Commonwealth Games, and we had teams from Canada, not US, but Canada sent out their team to Commonwealth, and there were a lot of Indians playing in that. And for your changed from leg spin to fast bowling, I did the other way around. I was a fast bowler first and then became a leg spinner. So all the best to you. Okay.
Yeah, gentleman in the blue striped shirt. Yeah.
Anilji, you may not be in Rajdeep's 11, but you're always there in Cricket Lovers, Art 11, always.
What's the question?
What next? What the next big role we can see in Anil Kumble's career?
In my career?
What next?
No, I'm involved with my company called Tenwick, and we do grassroots development of sports. So I have 100,000 kids playing different sports, and that's what I believe in. We need to start from the grassroots, and I'm really happy that I've been involved with that, and it's nice to see the growth of these young kids.
Well, let me get a newspaper headline out of him. Would you like to be the Indian cricket coach again or not?
Rajdeep, let's have the headline as Democracy 11 rather than this.
Hello. I had grown up seeing world-class fast bowlers like Anil Kumble, Harbhajan, Shane Warne, Glenn McGrath, many more.
Question.
I'm coming to that. Today
Time
we don't.
is going. That's right. First.
Today we don't have such world-class bowlers, or is it that batsmen don't fear bowlers?
No, I think you have world-class bowlers. You have Ashwin, who's world-class bowler. You have Dale Steyn, who's a world-class bowler, and you can have a long list of world-class bowlers. It's yes, in terms of when you look at comparisons, because of the T20 format, and then the same bowlers, like I mentioned, are different in a shorter format. You don't look at strike rates, you don't look at run rates. You're looking at how many wickets you can get in a T20 format rather than how many runs you're giving. So that's the change that is brought in. I think there are still world-class bowlers across world cricket, and the way the game has changed. There's no fear. Yes, batsmen have become more fearless towards facing bowlers, and not facing bowlers, but then not having to worry about getting out. I think that's the mindset change that T20 has brought about. The David Warners of this world, play a similar fashion in a test match to a T20. And that's the way. And if you look at even test match cricket, the aggressive approach is the best approach that people have realized at the top of the innings. Earlier, test match cricket, openers were supposed to tire the bowlers out. But it's the other way around. How can your attack get to 100 by lunch is what you're thinking. In test match cricket. So that's the strategic shift, and that's the approach that test teams are taking. And that's because of the format and the attitude and the innovation and also the application that the new generation has brought about in this game.
In your book, it mentions that you are a wicket keeper. Then why do you change it to becoming a bowler?
Oh, no, I think I kept only once. I've kept only once. I've kept wickets only once. I think when you grow up playing, unfortunately, on the streets of Bangalore, you can't really play cricket now. I grew up playing on the streets of Bangalore where, you could literally could play on the streets, pitch up a wicket as a stone. You just place the stone in the middle and then, bat. So you had to do everything. You had to wicket keep, you had to bowl fast bowling. You sometimes had to bowl left arm spin as well. So that's how you try and be everything. And if you are the youngest amongst your friends, then you have to field a lot as well.
Anil, this question is to you. India is #1 cash economy, and we have the cash-rich BCCI and the most corrupt NGO running the show in IPLs, and they're making slaves of cricketers. And we've got a lot of corruption in IPL and all over the world. And we have a lot of shell companies looting away India's cash economy. How do you tackle that?
I think you need to look at what the positives that have come out of the IPL. As a cricketer, I'd like to see it as someone growing up to play cricket. You're looking to become a professional. You're looking to, again, the broad base and what Rajdeep mentioned of someone not playing even first-class cricket being recognized and pulled up into a team. And that's the beauty about what the IPL has done. And like I mentioned, you can't insulate or isolate the sport from the society itself. So I think we need to address the society at large rather than pick and choose one format or one event in a whole organization.
Hi, Anil sir. Thanks for your words, sir. do you really think that the size of the bats really changed the scenario of T20, and did it really concern the bowlers? in
Yeah,
the
that's something
present
that we have
generation?
brought into the rules. We have restricted on the size of the bats. That was a discussion because not you. If you look at cricket itself over the last 130 years, the ball hasn't undergone much change. Only the color of the ball has gone change. From a red, it's become sometimes it's a four, cut ball or a two cut ball, and the seam used to be a lot more higher. Now it's even thinner, and that's so the ball hasn't seen much change. The only thing that has changed is the bat. Even I probably hit, I can't remember, probably single digit sixes in my career. And now, one game at the Chinnaswamy gets 36s in a match, which is ridiculous. So I can't really imagine myself, thinking that I could hit 15 sixes in a match or a team hitting 15 sixes. And that's because of, yes, the strength of the batsman, the skill of the batsman, yes, but also the equipment that they use. I mean, the bat is gone a sea change, and that's where we felt as a cricket committee that something had to be done, and we are hoping that it'll bring about a little better balance between ball and bat rather than just being towards one skill.
A couple of questions more, and then we'll end.
Sir, with T20 cricket, has the animosity between teams decreased? Because after, I remember 2007 precisely of the Australian saga, after which I have disliked Australians a lot. But then we see the same captain becoming the coach of a Mumbai Indian team, and even the players are that friendly with each other. So is it the money that has dissolved the animosity? And is it good for Indian cricket or world cricket as a whole?
Gideon is looking too surprised that Australians are disliked. Gideon, I have to. This is bad news, but it happens.
But look at it from this point of view. That you had this series between India and Australia, where there was the obvious animosity, particularly in the match in Bangalore. But you have a number of IPL teams where David Warner is sharing a dressing room with a Shikhar Dhawan.
That's why I tell cricket fans, don't get involved in fights between players. They'll sort itself out in the IPL. So just chill. Don't fight on social media. Don't start screaming at others. Just chill. Wait for the IPL. They'll be friends again.
No, I think it's good to know that you share the same dressing room with the others who are competitors when you're playing for your international teams, and it also gives you an opportunity to know the person, because when you're on tours earlier, at the start of my career, you had some time between matches and you could actually go out with the opposition and have a chat around the game and know the person. Today, the international calendar is so busy that you hardly get to spend any time with the opposition, let alone, have a chat about knowing the person. So IPL has given that opportunity of knowing the person. And I think once that happens in the exchange of ideas, can only help the game. And that has brought a lot of animosity even in the international games itself. I think that's the advantage that, sharing dressing rooms has made in the international arena itself. You don't see that many issues coming up. Yes, there are on and off incidents which is a part of the game, but other than that, there's hardly any issue.
Let me just send Gideon up, but the fact is that David Warner probably has played more cricket at the Hyderabad ground than most of the Indian test players. The only good thing is the Australians still don't know how to play spin. Despite all that, they will still struggle with spin. But the truth is that they are more accustomed now to Indian conditions than they ever were. We forget that the great Dennis Lillee, the great Greg Chappell never played a test match in this country. Between 1969 and 1979, the Australians never came to this country. Now they come running to this country every 3 months. If not for the IPL, then for some music concert or they see India as the land of money. And I think that's something that we forget. The Jeff boycotts did not want to come to this country thinking this was the land of poverty, where the hotels had mosquitoes, and they didn't come to India. Now they are all desperate to come to India.
The India-Australia rivalry is something, it's a very smartly created piece of foresight by Australian administrators. They created the Border Gavaskar Trophy, realizing that the Indian market is so huge, so that the Australians had better keep competing and playing with the Indians. This is 1998, I think, is when they played the first time. So everyone thinks that our rivalry goes back to Bradman and all. It doesn't. It's just about less than 25 years old. I'll just get a last question.
Hi, guys.
1 second. Gideon.
I was going to say, there was David Warner's remarks the other day about war and battle and hatred between England and Australia. I found them quite interesting. I mean, absurd, but at the same time, a recognition that perhaps a degree of disquiet in Warner, that perhaps international cricket had become a little bit too pally, that there wasn't sufficient hostility, that there wasn't sufficient edge. He was talking about the necessity of kind of working up an animosity to make you compete on the field, which is a suggestion that perhaps it doesn't come as naturally as it used to, precisely for the reasons that Anil was talking about before, the fact that these players during the IPL fraternise so easily.
Especially with context to the IPL, what are your views on the transition that a fan or even a player has to undergo every 3 or 4 years because he has to change teams, and subsequently a fan, for me, for example, I grew up watching the IPL, idolizing Dale Steyn when he ran in and bowled for Bangalore, and 3 years later, I was cheering for AB de Villiers to hit sixes because Bangalore needed 50 runs to win, and AB de Villiers took around 20 runs out of a Dale Steyn over while he was playing for Deccan Chargers. So for the player and the fan, there's this constant change in the player that he idolizes, something that may not have been very common 30 years ago. For a Gavaskar fan, he would have been a Gavaskar fan throughout. But I'm no more a Dale Steyn fan. I'm now a AB de Villiers fan or a Mitchell Stark fan.
I think, that's a great question because, generally in sport, mostly in cricket, you start following a particular player and you idolize and then say, okay, this is my favorite team because this particular player is playing. I think what IPL is trying to achieve is your fan towards the franchise and the team. I think once that starts coming in, then it doesn't really matter who's playing because then your franchise is what you want to support. And yes, there will be a few, tough moments for you because you would want your favorite player to be playing for your franchise, but unfortunately he would be in the opposition. But those are tough moments. But then I think in overall, for the longevity of the game itself and for the tournament, I think it's important that you start backing your franchise, your team. That's when the franchise will grow and also the tournament will grow. Otherwise, if you're following one player, then people thronging the stadium and following the one team will start dwindling, and that's something you don't want.
As a player, how did you manage, Anil?
Yeah, I think it's professional. It's quite challenging. Yes, it's always nice to play for one team, right? Throughout your career, but then that's the beast, as you say, that you may have to embrace when it comes to T20 franchise. And that's what you tend to, change. At the end of it, you're walking in a competitive way to win the game and help your team. So it doesn't really matter, which team you're playing for. And yes, there is an attachment. There is a attachment towards the franchise that you've been a part of. And suddenly, if that changes, it takes a while. But I think you tend to start, because at the end of it, you're a professional and you need to, continue to do the job.
One of the great stories. It happens in football.
It's very common in football for players to change, but this is European football. This is not American franchise-created football. European football has, teams have great loyalties from their fans.
When Figo moved, for example, from Barcelona to Real Madrid, I mean, for a while, he was under threat from Barcelona fans when he came back to Barcelona to play. We aren't in that situation in cricket. But the real story of the IPL, and I want to come back to the man who really took it off, Mahendra Singh Dhoni. He's the hero of my book for another reason. He is from Ranchi. He's adopted son today of Chennai. Nobody has broken the north-south divide better than him in the context of cricket. He's literally, you see the applause Dhoni gets today in Chennai. And, he also plays to it. He said, when Srinivasan came to my house, I gave him rasam and all that. So he's also realized that he's also, because of his, he's an astute marketing man. He's realized that he also has to play this sort of son of Chennai soul. But today, when Chennai comes back to play the IPL next year, you can bet your last dollar. They will put all the money to get Dhoni back. Now, can you imagine 25 years ago, a Hindi-speaking guy from Ranchi becoming the iconic figure of Chennai? And I think that's also part of changing India. IPL has helped also break a lot of boundaries. A Mumbai player comes and plays for Bengaluru, you suddenly
That's a more normal thing in the Indian team. In the Indian team, it's a very...
Yeah, but Dhoni did it
ages.
but Dhoni did it with the IPL. You see, in franchise cricket to do that was perhaps going to be always much more difficult. And you've got to give credit to Dhoni and I think the Chennai Super Kings franchise, which created this whole whistle podu thing. And, they are the franchise, according to me, which really has understood what franchise cricket is.
And Kolkata. Last question.
And Kolkata, yes. And
Last
Kolkata.
question from...
Thanks a lot, ma'am. So 2 questions I have. The first question is...
Fast.
Okay. The first question is, coming from a very common family background, taking up sports as a career, how was the support system for you? Challenges you faced? Because we fear for our kids when they say, okay, I want to take up cricket or football or something. Second thing, you had a very spectacular career, but there would be one achievement you really cherish forever in your life. Can you share that, please, with us? Thanks a lot. And third thing, we all love you a lot.
Thank you so much. No, in fact, growing up in Bangalore, for me, cricket was plan B, engineering was plan A. And fortunately, plan B worked ahead of plan A. So that's why, I took up cricket. And this happened parallelly. So, I think, that generation of, there was no IPL, so I could write my exams in April and May. I could go to my college. And the best moment was, 10 on 10 in Delhi was obviously the favorite moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You've been a great audience. Someone does have to ask a question, but we'll never stop if we don't stop here. Thanks very much. And thank you to all the panelists. Please a round of applause for them.